So this is the animation that we've been working on. And this is where we've gotten so far. So the shot is pretty much on 2s and 4s. And it's getting there. The main issue right now is that it's still in step mode. There's definitely a few little minor things that I feel like could be pushed and refined a little bit, especially like right here. If you watch the head as it comes down, see how his chin just stops? It's almost like he's putting his chin down on a some sort of table or something. That's definitely something I'd want to fix. There's little things like that. There's a few other breakdowns that I would personally put in, but at that point it's just kind of being nitpicky. Now, this is what we've got. When we go straight into splines, this is looking pretty good. We go straight into splines, we get this. Which is like, okay, the elements are all there. I can recognize what used to look good, but there's this element of like to it. It moves in a like janky way. There's these weird like pops and wiggles, and it's just like that life that we had in the previous version suddenly is gone. I can recognize what used to look good. Exactly. It's like everything's there. I know it's still there, and like I go back and okay, yeah, it looks good. Okay. Go here. And what's not working? And this is the typical spline response. Sometimes it's even worse, especially when you've got like FK, IK switches and constraints turning on and off, because an arm could suddenly start spinning and it's like, oh no, what's happened? So yeah, this is very common. When you go into splines, typically the things that seem to work don't work anymore. And there's a lot of different reasons for why this happens. The most common, especially for people who are starting out, is that you usually don't have enough breakdowns, or your breakdowns aren't detailed enough. You haven't gone through and pushed the lead and follow of the elements. So for example, here, this is one thing I made sure to do. As he's coming up, we feel the head go up first, and then the hips go to the side. So we get that lead and follow. Well, we've got that here. The next thing that typically happens is, is keyframe player Maya extension or standalone? It's standalone, but it does incorporate into Maya. So you can actually, there's a Maya plugin that goes along with it. Actually, I've never used the Maya plugin. I probably should someday. But it's a standalone player. So yeah, it's at this point, it's really just cleanup. And we're going to go through a few of the different areas that we typically see. We'll go through a few different areas that are typically the cause of why we get this weird feeling here. Now, there's a question here. How should animator's resume look? Like, it's supposed to be colorful and fancy, or just plain black? It's just a normal resume. Don't make it colorful and fancy. Basically, you want the information to be easy to access. That's the big thing. If you've got colorful and fancy and lots of different fonts and all of this stuff, all it does is make your resume harder to read and harder to like find the information. Nice and simple, just nice and clean. Your demo reel is what's showing your work. Your resume, honestly, most recruiters don't really look at a resume anyway. They'll look at it just kind of, okay, where have you worked? Do you have work experience? All of that. But they care about your demo reel. The resume, yeah, don't worry about making it fancy. Just nice, legible, clean, organized. That's the big thing. It should be nice and organized so that it's very easy to go through. And it's starting to animate from splines, a good way to work. That's my typical workflow. So with this assignment here that we're doing, I did a stepped blocking workflow. So I worked in step mode, and now we're going into splines. I actually don't normally do this anymore. I normally work right in splines right from the start. So as I'm blocking, I tend to fix a lot of the issues that we now encounter right here before we even get to this point. That's the nice thing about spline blocking. The problem with spline blocking, and the reason why I didn't show it in this, is if you're first starting out, when you're first learning, spline blocking can lead you down paths that, or let me put it this way, it can trick you into making poses that are not correct, and it makes it harder to know whether something that doesn't look good is something you've done or something that Maya has done. Like here, for example, what part of this that, like, there's this weird feeling of, does it really look good? I don't know. Is it something I've done? Is it something wrong with the poses? Or is it something that Maya added in when we went into splines? If you worked right from splines right away, you have no way of really knowing, especially if you're new, you don't have the experience to know what is a Maya feeling and what's the, like, your own poses. But if you work in step mode, well, obviously my poses feel pretty good. My timing feels pretty good in here. So what we're seeing when we go into splines is Maya causing some issues. So by working in step mode first, it allows you to better refine and learn where things are going wrong. As you get more experience, definitely feel free to transition into spline blocking, because it's a faster workflow, simply because you're doing 2 or 3 things at a time. So my favorite kind of analogy for this is like when you're learning how to draw. My favorite analogy, but I have so much trouble drawing like this. So when you first learn to draw, let's say you're trying to draw a head. Well, what you're taught typically is to start with a circle, and then you add kind of like a shape for the jaw, and you add a cylinder for the neck. You have to think of your proportions. So you're shaping it from these base shapes. Start with a sphere, add different things, add a little loop for the ear. The body is a egg shape. You've got the torso, which is a cylinder. Then the hips, which normally most people kind of do like a square or some sort of block. Okay, so that's the typical way like you approach drawing when you first start out, and that's good because it's making you think of all these different shapes and proportions. Even if you have to draw something in perspective, you start with, let's say, the circle for the head, and now we're going to go away from the camera here. The ribs are going to be like over here, and then you get the torso, and then like that. So now we've got the character kind of leaning back and away from us. So you use that same fundamental. Now, as you get better and as you get more experience, you're still thinking of all of this, but you don't have to do every single step. You start merging them together. So you can just kind of, okay, go for the head, and there's the shape of the skull. The body is going to be, so I'm still thinking through, but I can kind of just simplify it right away. And draw the same thing, but without all the extra steps. Same thing with the face, same thing with all these different elements. So animation is the same thing. When you're first learning, it's good to do these steps because you start realizing at what stage is something gonna break? What stage is something going wrong? Is it your initial posing? Is it your initial timing? All of that. If you start merging these steps together, it does make you faster, yes, but in the end, it makes you slower because you have to fix these problems and you won't know where to fix them. So it's the same reason why when you're learning animation, you want to learn the fundamentals first. You want to learn the bouncing ball. You want to learn the pendulum. You want to learn the basic principles, the 12 principles of animation. Because everything is built on this. When we were doing our blocking yesterday, I was mentioning a few times where I was trying to think of the pendulum for the spine. I was trying to think of a bouncing ball for the hips. It's all the same principles, even on a complex character like that. So it's just a matter of kind of making sure you understand each step. Now, you don't have to do it. So, for example, you never learned the step blocking at school. That's fine. Like, as long as you understand where the issue is happening, that's the big thing. So if you first started learning, like I know a few animators, their first time animating, they're doing layered animation instead of spline blocking. I usually don't recommend that because it's very tricky to make sure you have really solid poses. But if you learn it correctly and it makes sense to you, there's nothing wrong with it. This is the big thing. There's no wrong way to do art. So it's, if ever anyone has seen the SpongeBob episode, like how to draw a perfect circle, where SpongeBob draws like a full figure, like beautifully rendered face, and then he erases the details until it's like a stick figure, or like just a rough construct, and erases again until he's just got a perfect circle. It's like, well, that's backwards. That's a very complicated way to just draw a circle, but it works for him. And that's the big thing, is if it works for you and if you get a good result in the end, there's nothing wrong with it. As long as you're not wasting time, and as long as, again, it looks good to the audience. Everything that I'm showing here, like this is my workflow, but it doesn't mean it's the workflow, the one way that you all have to do this. You all have to follow my words. No, if this is just kind of an example, do what works best for you. And in general, like big generalization, stepped blocking typically works best for most people, just because it tends to make sense and is easily readable, but not for everyone. So hopefully that makes sense. Now let's take this and start going through in Maya and figure out what's going on. Yesterday I forgot to say something about Attack on Titan. If you watch season 3, I promise you'll see an amazing fight scene and a great thing to analyze. Nice. Yeah, I've managed to avoid most spoilers. So I've been lucky that way, and I'm excited to see what happens. Apparently some universes only teach you one workflow and expect you to use it. Yeah. It's something that I'm not a fan of. I like to learn a lot of different workflows. So for example, on the streams, we've talked about layered workflow. We've talked about, I usually use this workflow for demo purposes, but we've done spline blocking workflows. We've done all sorts of workflows. And this is something that in Animation Mentor you learn, because every mentor has like a slightly different workflow, and you're encouraged to try every mentor's workflow to find the one that works best for you, the one that will make sense to you. And you can start merging the workflows and mixing and matching and all of that stuff. So yeah, we're good. The big thing with workflows is that there is no one universal workflow. That's the other thing, is like I'm using step blocking here. If this was a quadruped shot, I would not be using step blocking at all. It would make life miserable to try and do a quadruped shot in stepped blocking. I would use layered to do a quadruped shot. Just all the foot contacts, especially if you're doing a run or a walk, at least to me, like I know some animators who would still animate in a stepped blocking, but I don't like that. It's too complex, and it's just too much. I would much rather work in a layered method and get the feeling of the motion first, and then just get the legs to work afterwards. It's so much easier to do than to try and figure out 4 different contact poses and the timing of the legs and all of that while working on everything else too. So yeah, it really depends. If I'm doing a very subtle shot, I usually like to work in spline blocking, mostly because since the characters aren't moving, it doesn't feel like they just freeze on the screen the whole time. For something like this, I'll usually use spline blocking, but sometimes I'll use more of a stepped approach in certain areas, especially for really high action shots. It can be really nice because you can get that Spider-Verse feeling and get that like that really high intensity without having to deal with the of splines where everything feels floating. The big thing is that if you have a camera move, just making sure that the character stays still while the camera moves. So let's actually go into Maya and see how we can start fixing this. So we've got our animation here. Oh, by layered you mean in passes of body parts? Yes. So layered animation means, like you said, doing passes on the body parts, starting with the hips, then the chest, then the head. Not using animation layers. You could use animation layers for it, but animation layers are a whole other thing. So, we've got this here. So there's our shot. Same thing we saw earlier. And when we go into splines, there's two main things that will tend to make your shots look meh. Like, kind of kill the whole feeling and the high energy, the wonderful, great feeling that you got in the shot. So let me actually take this and put everything into splines here. So we'll just take this, go into splines or auto tangents. And then I'm also going to go into my graph editor, go under tangents, and I'm going to switch my default in and out tangents to auto. That way I don't always have to remember to set this again if I set a new key. So we've got this, and again, our animation is going to lose a lot. Now, the two main areas, my very first go-to when I go into splines is to double check the feet and the hips. Now, in this case, the feet aren't going to be doing much because the character is really not walking that much. But when you start to see like this loss of weight, your characters suddenly feel floaty and boring throughout the whole shot, a good chunk of that comes from the hips and the feet not working correctly. So, when you are doing that, for example, imagine we're doing a full walk. Look at what's happening with the foot. It's peeling up, and then it cuts through the ground and then up right there. Now, as a context, it's actually pretty good. But then with this one, we get a little pop. It just pops forward and then back. And then let's see what happens when it lands. Okay, it's just kind of linear and boring. So we've got like this foot motion, and it's just not great. Now imagine if this was a walk cycle where we could actually see the character moving and see their feet on screen. Every time that foot doesn't work quite right, it kills the feeling of weight in your character, because if the feet aren't working right, then the character has to be floating. There's no way that like they could move if their feet don't work. So one of the first things I do is I double check the feet and just do a quick pass on the feet to try to fix as much as I can quickly. This is going to get the character to feel solid on the ground. Dave, so I'm using Maya, and it costs, you can get an educational license, which is free if you're currently enrolled in a school. Typically it costs $265 American per year for the indie license, which is if you work on freelance projects, things like that, up to a certain amount of money in terms of income, you can get the indie license. And that's about $265, I believe, American. So it's not bad. And the nice thing with Maya is it's the industry standard for animation. So if you learn Maya, like ILM uses Maya, what other companies use Maya? Quite a few. Disney used Maya until not too long ago when they started using Pixar's software. I think MPC uses Maya. A lot of the big companies uses Maya, so it's a good one to learn. If you can't afford that or just want something that's free, Blender is a great one. It's not an industry standard, And these animation tools aren't quite as strong, but it's still a fantastic program. I love Blender. I haven't actually used it that much, I will admit, but it is very, very good. So let's just do a quick pass on the foot here while we're kind of thinking about it. So first thing is the feet. And like I said, it's just a matter of breaking things down a little bit more. So at this point, when I'm in splines, I don't worry about trying to key everything on every single frame all together. Now, this is because I went through a very, very deep breakdown pass. So I already made sure that I have my keys pretty much where I need for everything else. If you haven't done this yet, I would still try to block out everything all together on a full pose. The only reason I'm not doing that is because I've already made sure to get all those keys in there. Wow, those words did not want to get out of my mouth there. So here I want that foot to push off the ground. So what I'm going to do is basically make sure that the reason why it was cutting through the ground was as it's picking up, it's using the foot roll attributes, which allow you to push the foot up off the ground. And then it's also starting to slide the foot up into the air because here it's using the translates and rotates. So what I need to do is I need to make sure that I have a switch where as it's going up, and let's make sure that I actually key that frame properly. Oop. As it's going up, we get that nice foot roll pushing up. So we get that motion in there. And then it goes up and whoop, off the ground. So just get a nice switch right in there. And I'm looking for toe tap. That's the one. Okay. Now I don't have to worry about polishing this exactly, but one thing I will do is make sure that the foot doesn't ease in at the top. So for anyone who's doing like a walk cycle right now, this is very important. You don't want the heel to ease in, come to a stop, and then lift off the ground. So I'm going to take the foot roll here and just make sure that the tangent whoop, goes faster, 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 and then leaves off the ground there. So already, just by adding that one key and a few little tweaks in my tangents, there you go. That foot is working much better. Now, we've got the other foot. Look at what's happening with the other foot. See how it just floats off the ground? That kind of feels weird. Like, imagine trying to step up onto your toes that slowly, where you're just slowly, ever so slowly inching up off of the ground. That would be hard. You would have to have really good leg strength to do that. So I'm going to adjust that. I don't want to overextend the leg too much, but basically what I want is the character to come up onto his feet a little faster here, or up onto the toes. So we get something a little bit more like this. So now that foot stays still and then goes up a little faster there. I can probably push it a little bit more even. There we go. Okay. So we'll zero that out. So the foot stays still, and then we'll start to raise it up. So something like that. Now, I'm not going to worry about offsetting curves and all of that just yet. I could if I wanted to. So maybe if I want that foot to come up just a little faster, I could offset that curve here. I could. There's nothing stopping me. But for now, I'm going to try to keep things as in line as possible, just for the sake of keeping things organized. Now as he comes down, get that nice slam. I think this could slam down a little faster here, so just gonna zero that out as well. So there we go. Now that foot, instead of just that slow, very even raise and then drop, just feels a little bit more interesting. There's more weight into it. Now, in this case, does it make a difference? No, not really, because we can't see it. But if you're doing a full body shot where you can see the feet, this is going to be crucial in getting good, solid work in your contacts. Otherwise, what's going to end up happening is everything's weightless and everything kind of, it's not going to work great. So one of the very first things I do when I am when I'm getting into splines is just going through and refining my contacts. And it's not going through and trying to make everything absolutely perfect. Not yet. So for example here, the heel, see how fast it goes? It drops down and then it eases so slowly. That kind of feels a little weird. So let's tweak that. Comes through. And I could ease that a little bit. And then here, let's have it drop a little faster and try to get a little bit more of a nice ease in there. It's going to be slight, but I think I can exaggerate it up here a little bit. So now as it comes down, we get that feeling of it's speeding down into the ground versus pausing halfway and then weirdly holding. Now, if I did want to have a hold, that's not a bad thing either. The big thing is I want to make sure that the spacing here, see how it's very big and then it just stops very suddenly? I just want to even that out just a little bit more. So just kind of push that a little bit more. Would you take the toe tap in negative for follow through? Oh, so you mean like have the toes drag like this? Not normally. It's not a bad thing to have a little bit of it. There's nothing wrong with that. The main thing is that our toes don't really drag that much. And one thing here is I've got some toe tap or some foot roll all the way through here. Let me actually zero that out. Don't need that. So toe tap, when you're animating the toes, having the toes kind of do this, we can curl our toes, but normally our feet don't really, our toes are not wobbly and they don't just kind of flop around. If they were, we'd break our toes much more often. Our toes are pretty stiff, and unless we're actively trying to push them down, they're gonna just kind of stay straight, especially if we're wearing shoes. If anything, our toes tend to point up a little bit more just because it's easier to tense your foot that way. So unless I have a character that's pushing off the ground, in those like 1 or 2 frames after they push off the ground, I might drag the toes a little bit just to kind of get some extra oomph in there. But after that, I try to keep the toes more straight than anything. The more you start to kind of let them like sag, it can look really weird. So we're getting a weird arc here. See how that foot kind of stops right there? So I don't have to fix this yet. Honestly, like this is not part of the foot pass that I normally do. I just kind of do the contacts. But hey, while we're here, might as well. I see the issue. Instead of just skipping it, I can just push that arc so it comes through, and then we're going to get just a little bit of a kind of dip there. So it goes down, up, and then down again. And let's exaggerate that even more. So this is one of my favorite parts about splining, is that you're not stuck to what your keys were before, and then you're just kind of trying to move them up and down. When I'm going into splines, I like to try and add little overshoots and extra little elements. So for example here, that foot now goes down, then back up. So we get a little kind of whoop, a little extra motion. So that's the overshoot right there. Then it comes up, and we get just a tiny little anticipation before it comes down to contact the ground. And I'm just going to rotate the foot back a little bit more here. There we go. So now we get that arc, and it just feels a little bit more interesting versus down, left, and then down again. And you can always double check your other arcs here. So it's kind of feeling a little linear right there. So that would be my translate X mostly. Oh yeah, that's definitely linear. So as it's coming down, maybe we will kind of arc it back this way and then ease in a little bit more here. So we get something a little bit more like that. Now as it comes down, let's have the knee lead a little bit more. So I'm going to take the foot and actually have it go back a little bit, so it'll act as an anticipation. So it goes back and then out. Now here it kind of freezes a little too much, so bring that back. This is starting to get like nitpicky cleaning up of arcs, but there's no rule that says that you have to do this in like a very specific order and like you have to do a certain thing at a certain time. Whatever you feel will make your shot better, as long as you're not getting into like polish details. If you're starting to get into polish too early, essentially what's going to happen is you're going to be wasting time. Here I'm just trying to get a little bit more of a natural arc right there. So something like that. Scene time warp. How to slow down and make animation fast from it. I actually never use scene time warp. Basically, scene time warp, I believe you can find it in the graph editor under edit, scene time warp right here. You can add it, and essentially what this is going to do is it's going to change the interpolation of time in your shot. So for example, normally it's going to be linear. So from frame 1 to the end of your shot, there's this linear time. You can kind of think about it like every second is 1 second. It's just a linear amount of time. Everything is even. If you start changing this, what's going to happen is now the motion here is going to be faster, and then the motion there is going to be slower. The steeper the curve, the faster things happen. The flatter the curve, the slower things happen. So I'm affecting the seconds in the shot, the actual time. Like I'm warping time and space itself to make this happen. So you could use something like this to affect your animation. So for example, let's make the beginning a little slower. Whoop, like that. And now you can see he just kind of hits this default pose, which is a pose that's actually off screen, but because I've slowed down time so much, he kind of freezes in that. And now we get this nice slow motion before, and now the ending is going to be really fast. So that's basically it. You can set keys in here to affect the way Maya interpolates time. By default, it should be linear. That gives you just a nice normal time. Like I said, I don't usually use scene time warp. I I would much rather retime my animation myself than use that, just because it can get a little weird. And I've seen, yeah, it's basically bullet time. That's basically it, where it's just slowing things down. There are times when it can be useful, but usually that's for a very specific situation. Yeah, this foot contact definitely needs some refining. So you can see how the foot just snaps over right there. That's definitely something I would want to tweak. So for example, I would tweak this. So which attribute am I looking for? Side to side. We get that. So as he contacts the ground, it's to the side, and then it flattens out. That's better. But that's refinement stuff for later. Right now we're just worried about getting the core in there, the big elements. So here we're getting an FK-IK pop. You see how the foot just kind of snaps and you get these extra controls. It's halfway between the FK and the IK. So when I first go into splines, I make sure I do a pass where I just get all of the switches to work correctly. In this case, I would want the foot to stay in IK right here. So now the foot stays in IK and then goes into FK there. I'm just going to add a little slip of the foot, a little roll. So now as the foot comes up, we kind of create a nice smooth transition into there. And I can, if I wanted to, add just a tiny little extra slip right in here, where we feel that foot just ever so slightly start to move back as he's pulling up, and then right through there. And we just get a nice little feeling of pressure in that foot. And it comes up, and there we go. So it doesn't take long, but it's going to add a lot. Now we also got this big pop right here. So that would be something that I would want to try and fix. So just kind of watching this here, maybe add a little bit more of a slide to the side, a little rotation to the foot. Now as the foot comes through, we feel that kind of pull. A little bit more here as well. So we get that. Suddenly, instead of the foot just snapping back and kind of weirdly just switching, we get a nice clean transition, and it doesn't take long. Did you need to animate that foot? I thought since it's off screen, you don't really need to do anything. I don't necessarily need to do anything with it. This is more for demo purposes than anything. Since the feet are off screen, as long as I'm not getting a major pop. So for example, that big pop that I was seeing in the foot, and I kind of still feel it right there, I might try to solve that a little bit. Just because we're probably going to notice something in the leg snapping, and you can actually see it right here. See there? How you feel that pop right there? So that's what I'm trying to fix, is like these little areas where the leg is, those pops and wiggles are going to be noticeable even though we don't see the feet. So right there, suddenly no knee pop. And just refining that foot. So no, you don't have to refine these, but you still want to touch them and like clean them up. I'm not going to polish the feet, but the feet are attached to the legs, and the legs we do see. And this is the same thing with the hips. A lot of people, when they're doing a shot, let's say like this, where you just see the chest and nothing else, they won't animate the hips. They'll just animate the spine and the shoulders and only the controls that you can see. And that is a very good way to get a shot that just looks fake and is not going to be real. it looks like something's missing. Because it is. Even though you can't see my hips are moving. If I do this, I'm getting a lot of rotations in my hips. If I lean forward or back, my hips are moving a lot. So we won't have to necessarily polish them up and get every tiny little wiggle in there, but you do want to spend some time to get a good pass on it. Now here we get another switch. Just trying to figure out where I want to actually have the switch. I think this frame I kind of want it to be IK still, and then this frame will be FK. I normally try to do my FK IK switches over one frame. I feel it gives me more control and just kind of better results in general. Not all the time, but it just kind of makes it so that you're not fighting the controls. Okay, and then here, if I look at the leg, see how it kind of goes forward right there? So forward and then pops back. I'm just going to try to bring this back here. And the reason that this is happening is I just don't have emojis. I don't know if that menu actually showed up on camera. The Windows emoji menu came up, which I didn't realize was a thing. Apparently Windows has a custom built-in emoji selection. Okay, so watching that knee. Yeah, it pops too far down here. So I'm just tracking the knee. And I'm just doing this visually. You could use an arc tracker for it if you wanted to. I'm not a huge user of arc trackers. For certain things I'll use it, but in general I just use my eye or I'll draw it out. There we go. So now that knee, we're not getting a huge pop. We're still getting a wiggle, like right there. You can feel that. The thing though is I don't want to get too caught up on the foot, because if we do, we're going to end up having to redo a lot because we haven't done the hips yet. I'm just trying to get the basic motion of the feet more than the actual like knees and all of the whole leg. Okay. Well, we did a quick pass on the feet and already it's looking better. At least like from the feet we can see. And in the shot, it's not going to make a huge difference because we don't really see anything. But now if we play through here, you can see that the feet are actually kind of working. There's a few areas where it pops still. So for example, right here, that foot just kind of snaps back too quickly and then freezes. That's arc tracking. But overall, the actual physicality is working. Oh, these markers, these are bookmarks. So in Maya, you can actually add bookmarks. It's, let's see, I'll have to turn off my camera. It's right here. You can just go to any frame or a range of frames and click this button and add a bookmark. You can even name it. So let's do a pink one. And that'll just put a marker over your timeline. It's a great way to mark things. So I was marking it in the last stream to show where I was gonna put some breakdowns. I actually don't need these anymore. So I'm just going to go through here, right click on that bookmarks button and hit delete all bookmarks. And now they're gone. So if ever you need to mark something, you can just use that bookmark tool. It's very nice. And the tools above the timeline and below the graphic editor, this is Animbot. It's a very good animation plugin. I don't typically use it because I like to demo things so that anyone can follow along regardless of what plugins you have. So I don't usually use this in demo purposes. But day-to-day animation, it is a very handy set of tools. If you can afford it, I definitely recommend it. There is a free version called A-Tools, which is the previous version, which you could also get. And it has a lot of the same functionality. And Mr. Johan, hello! So, we've got the feet in there. Let's call the feet done for now. We can go in and start nitpicking it, but we got the feet. Now, I mentioned earlier that there's two main areas that will cause your shots to feel a little meh when you go into splines. The other one is the hips. If the hips aren't working correctly and the hips are getting pops and wiggles and just aren't appealing, nothing else is going to be appealing. The hips typically are where most of our motion comes from. So my first thing that I'll do when I'm going into splines is look at the feet, just fix any major issues, and then look at the hips, because the hips are going to determine how the character moves, where their weight shifts are, if they feel heavy or light. If their hips are just floating through, everything else will feel floating. The world and object transformations, the quick shortcut for that is Control Shift right click. So if you just hit Control Shift right click or Command Shift on a Mac, you can easily switch between object mode, component mode, world mode. If you're in rotations, you can switch to gimbal mode right there. It makes it very easy. So if I'm moving things, I can just do that, switch back. And when you know the directions, like you can go so fast that you don't even see the menu, like just like that. And there you go, it switches. So I really love that. It's why you'll notice I don't have any menus in Maya, is because I use the hotbox, which is just holding down spacebar and you can get to every menu in Maya right there. You don't need to see all the menus. It kind of makes it a little hard because it overlaps a lot of things. So like right here, it can kind of be hard to read. But if I need to get to any of the graph editor menus, just hold down spacebar and they're right here. If I need to go to like file, save, well, it's right here. File, and there's all my file options. And now I'm not having to move my mouse all the way, or my tablet specifically. I'm not having to go all the way across the screen just to get to different menus. It's right where my mouse is, hold down spacebar, there we go. I can create a constraint right there instead of having to go through and switch menus and all of that stuff. So I like that. It makes my work a little faster and just kind of makes it less, it feels like I'm fighting Maya less, or I should say fighting like all these menus less. It also makes my workspace a lot cleaner because look at all the space I have. Yeah, it is so much faster when you get used to it. At first it's going to be a nightmare because most people aren't used to this kind of workflow. Not many other programs use this type of menu system. But once you get used to it, man, is it nice. I'm actually trying to set that up on ZBrush as well. Because ZBrush, you can make your own custom menu that can pop up wherever your mouse is, and it's just so nice. And yeah, the space you get is so nice. Like if I just bring this down and go full screen here, look how close I can get on the character. It's just no menus getting in the way. It's fantastic. And if you have multiple monitors, it's even better because the graph editor is on its own monitor. The shot camera is on its own monitor. You just get so much detail in there. So highly recommend that workflow. Now, let's go into the hips. So are you able to access the shelf items that way? Unfortunately not. The shelf is one of the few things that you won't have access to. But if I need to bring it back, I can hold down spacebar, click over here, and just turn on shelf. And there you go. I bring my shelf back. So now I can use anything on the shelf if I want to. If I know, I'm not going to be using the shelf for a while, hold down spacebar, go to the right here, and turn the shelf back off. There we go. So you can very easily get the shelf in and out, and it depends on how much you're using it. So I almost never use the shelf unless I make a custom button for one very specific scene, or if I'm using a plugin like GUI Picker or Studio Library. But that's usually just to open it, and then I don't use it again. So I prefer to just not see it most of the time. It's actually the same with these menus here. I don't really use these menus too often, so I turn those off normally as well. So now you can see how much space I have. Let's see, did I do a demo with Animbot in the past? I did do one. I don't know if it's still up. I bought it and I feel a bit lost. I know that there's a video from Sir Wade. I think he did a demo on Animbot and went through the tools. So I would recommend checking that out. I know I did a demo a while back, but I can't remember if it's still up on the stream. I basically went through all the tools and kind of went over if I would use these or not. And okay, you watched it, but it's not enough. Okay, I'll have to see. I'll have to double check if it's still up on there. If you want to double check, you can click on the avatar in the bottom left corner and then go to the videos and search through there. If not, I might have to just do another demo on that, because I know they added a whole bunch of new tools as well, or some new functionality, which I haven't had a chance to check out, which is a shame. So let's see here. I know they also have a bunch of like help videos. So if you just hover over, it'll explain what the tool does, which is very handy. So you just move your mouse over and then it'll kind of give you all of these demonstrations and even some tutorial videos that you can watch. So that might be worth it as well. It should be titled Animbot. So if you do a search, it should find it. Now, let's go to the hips here. So with the hips, there's a few things that we want to do. The first is going to be just a general passive cleanup and trying to make sure that they feel really appealing. So as we go through here, we can do this in a lot of different ways. I can go through my graph editor and start trying to clean up some of the curves. That's nice, but the problem with general cleanup of curves, so for example, oh look, there's a little wiggle here, let's just clean that out, is if you're just doing that randomly and just in general, we talked about this yesterday, what's going to end up happening is you're just going to kill your shot. Oftentimes when you see a little bit of a wiggle in an area like that, they can be there for a reason. Not all the time, but sometimes they are there for a very important reason. They create a little hitch, or they create a little extra life in the shot. If everything is just smoothed out perfectly, which is what I used to do. So for example, oh, there's a little dip here. Let's just smooth that out. No, that's a great way to just kill everything that you did in blocking. Our bodies do have hitches. Our bodies do have times when they speed up and slow down. So cleaning up is not just going through this willy-nilly. We want to try and get the appeal in there. So I'm going to be going through and cleaning up the graph editor a little bit, but I have to be very selective on how I do it. Now, one of my favorite ways of doing this is using the sphere method. I've talked about this a lot in the past, but the big thing that I try to do is I want to get the feeling of the hips. They should be interesting. They on their own should move through the scene in a cool and interesting way. If they do, the rest of the body will move through the scene in a cool and interesting way as well. So to kind of demonstrate this, what I'll normally do is I'm going to go to create and I'm going to create a NURB sphere right there. Now you don't see anything because I need to go to show and turn on NURB surfaces right there. Hey, and actually I have a sphere already in place. So let me actually, I'm going to delete the old one just so we can see how this goes. So I'm going to take this sphere and I'm going to constrain it to the hips. So I'm going to take the hips, then the sphere, and I'm going to go to constrain, parent, and turn off maintain offset. This will snap them together. Boop. There we go. So we've got the sphere right where the hips are. So what this basically allows me to do is I'm going to go to my shot camera and I'm going to turn off polygons and I'm going to turn on NURB surfaces. So that's basically where the hip is. And now I can play through my scene and just see how the hips are moving through. And see if that feels interesting and appealing. So let me actually turn off polygons here and we'll see if we can get our frame rate to be nice and high. It's not great. But we can start to refine our motion right from there. And what's nice about this is now you're not going to be caught on anything else. The arms aren't getting in the way. None of the other elements are going to stop you from seeing what's happening with the hips. So I can go through here and just start looking through the motion. Right here, it kind of feels a little flat. I'm kind of noticing. See how the sphere just kind of slides across? I could probably push that a little bit there. Right here, there's an area where I definitely feel like right there how it comes down and then it just kind of pops back up at the same speed. I'm not a fan of that. And then right at the end is kind of boring as well. So these are all areas that I can push and try to exaggerate. So you can just go into your graph editor, start cleaning that up. You could just move the sphere where you want. Another thing I'll do is I'll sometimes use an editable motion trail as well. So you can use the one in Maya, go to visualize, create editable motion trail. I'm not a fan of the Maya one. It's a little slow. So I'll use the Animbot one just to speed things up. They do the same thing. So it's going to be the same basic tool. But this will allow you to see the path that your object goes through. And we can see right here, this is that flat part right there. Goes through. It kind of, right here, see how it flattens out? We've got this big drop. Drops. And then it loses its momentum there before it pops back up. Right there. So these are all areas that it's small, but it's taking away the appeal from the sphere here. So let's see if we can kind of push that a little bit more. Now the reason I like the sphere method as well, so another reason I like this, is that it forces you to focus on one thing at a time. So as we're doing this, we are focusing 100% just on the translations of the sphere, not the rotations. This is why I like to use a sphere, because we do not see anything else other than those translations. It comes through, very nice. Okay, let's see if we can maybe push that up just a little higher, get a little bit more of that bouncing ball. I really need to get that song out of that playlist. It's so high pitched. So we're just trying to push that bouncing ball peak there. As it comes down, maybe drop this a little faster right there, make that a little smoother. Get a nice hang time right in here. Okay, drops, that's good. Now here, it just plateaus. So definitely I'm going to try and push this to be a little rounder there. Now you can see how we just get a little bit of that nice dip before it comes back up. Now, one thing I always look for when I'm doing a change of direction, so in this case it's going down and then it's going back up, look for your peak. So the peak, I'll put a key here. The peak is the lowest or highest point. It's the area that, like the extreme, that would be the proper term for it. So that's the extreme right there. Look at the key before and after it. Notice how even they are. I'll exaggerate it here. So it's even, the same on both sides. I try to avoid this as much as possible. That kills a change of direction. It just makes it feel flat and boring. Instead, a change of direction is more interesting if you have one side higher than the other. So, for example, something like this. So now it comes in faster than it goes out. you could do the opposite, where it goes out faster than it comes in. But as long as you have some sort of variation, if it's all the same and just like even in and out, it makes it so boring. So, comes through, comes back up. Now we've got a little pause here. When I was younger, my first reaction would be, oh, let's just clean that up. Look at how much smoother that is. Wow-wee, I'm so good. I'm cleaning up my curves. Now, my first reaction is, okay, why is it here? What's happening in this section that would cause this to have a little bit of a hitch? I have to think through. This is your translate Y, your up and down. So let's bring our character back. And as he's coming through, he comes up and he's kind of pausing here. He stands up, pauses, and then his leg kicks back and his body kicks back, which then causes him to get pulled again. So this pause is not a bad thing. It is literally him taking a break before his body gets yanked back by his head and his leg. So I don't want to remove that. If anything, I want to exaggerate that hold a little bit more. So we kind of feel a little bit of a pause. And then time it so that we feel that yank go through. So when you're cleaning up your curves, it is not going through and just globally flattening everything, or sorry, not flattening, but globally smoothing everything and trying to get it absolutely perfect and just clean lines. That will kill your animation so fast. I think I can exaggerate this even more. So this is where I would probably offset my curve a little bit, but we can do that a little later. Do you have any tips for recovering a corrupted Maya file that freezes Maya when loading? I have Animbot recovery, but since the file won't load, I can't see the checkpoints. If it's crashing Maya when you're loading, usually it means that a reference is corrupted, or there's something in the file that's stopping it from opening. The best thing to do is, one, make sure you have it saved as a .ma. That ideally you should always be saving your files as .ma. And what you can do is, let's see here. So I've got my Maya files here. You'll see that they're saved as .mas. I can right click on it and open it with a text editor. I use Notepad++. And in here, you'll see the code for your file. Now there's a lot of code in here. It can be very daunting. But what you can start doing is turning off certain references. So for example here, this is where right at the top, it's loading in the reference. So there's the file, here's Jules, here's the location on my computer, and it's loading in the rig. So what I can do is just turn that off right there. Switch that to 0. That should stop it from loading in. Basically, it's just not going to load in the reference. And from there, you just do that with all the references in your scene. Save this out, try to reopen the shot, and then you can determine which reference is causing the break. And you might even be able to transfer the animation from that onto another one without having to have it freeze. Yeah, unfortunately, if you're, like Cobra mentioned, if it's a .mb, then you might be able to get someone else to try and open it, but that's going to be pretty like hit or miss. Usually a .ma is way better because you can actually edit the code there. Worst case scenario, if you still can't transfer it, what you can do is, this is harder because you have to dig through code, is you can find out where the animation actually starts. So I believe it's right here. So this is where it's actually starting to set the keys for the characters. I can copy all of my animation here. It's a lot. and then paste it into a working file. So open the last version of the file that worked, paste over my animation, and it'll transfer it over. There's actually an article on that. I don't have the exact, well, actually I can find the link. So I actually wrote an article on that a long time ago, back when I was in Animation Mentor as a student. So this is an old blog that Cameron and I used to write for the school, which is just like tips and tricks for different assignments. And this article here goes over how to recover the animation like that. So it tells you what areas to look for and then where to copy from. So you can try that. And that can be very helpful in recovering files. I've recovered a few files that way, and man, is it nice. Open the text file, but I don't know what to do from there. I'll try turning references on and off. Yeah, and then try that article, see if that helps. And Woodland Yeti, hello! Could you show how you use the blue pencil? In my case, it doesn't work properly. How is it not working? Is it just not loading at all? Or is there anything specific? It should just kind of work. So for example, once you have it loaded, there's my blue pencil right there. I can load that in. And I like to open up the toolbox. This gives you all the drawing tools right there. I also like to open up the layer manager, just because now I can do all the drawings and open up my layers and everything very nice and easily, make new layers if I want to. So it's essentially you make a new layer and then you just draw over top. So that's basically it. There's not too much more to it. The big thing is making sure you have the layers on. If you don't have the layer, for example, here I'm trying to draw and nothing's showing up. Turn on the layer. Now it's working. So this is why I like to have the layer manager open all the time. So hopefully that helps. Ooh, Anim Warriors has a course on Animbot. Nice. That's awesome. So let's keep going here. So I'm just looking at my curve, looking for any kind of boring areas. Now I'm focusing mostly on the Y first. I like to do one attribute at a time, just for my sake. We're getting a little wiggle here. Now, is that a bad thing? Let's look at our animation. Not really. He's lifting his leg there, so there could be a reason for that little bit of a dip, but I can maybe just clean that up just a little bit, smooth that out before the drop here. Now, this drop, this is the area that I was saying feels a little weird, because you can see where it starts and where it ends is very much the same. So like I was saying earlier, this to me feels very boring. So I'm going to try and exaggerate this a little bit more. I'm going to have it drop down. And in this case, I can just use a tangent here and pull this out. So we kind of favor the bottom, or I could add some new keys. I'm personally a fan of adding keys. Just it kind of gives you a little bit more control over things. So it comes in. Let's add another key here. And I'm going to try and add a little bit more weight to the hips right there. So it's going to ease out a little bit more right there. And then as it comes up, let's exaggerate this a little bit more, have it come up a little faster. Ease into that top there. So now we get that nice up, and we'll add a little bit more hang time over here as well. So we're just trying to get that nice like up, hold, swoop down. I think, let's see what's happening here. I feel like I can push this a little bit more here. just so we can get a little bit more of a dip in that arc there. More of a swoop and a swing. So just tweaking things a little bit. As it comes up, this is too flat right there. It's just going straight up, but that's my translate X most likely. So we come up, that's good. Get that nice ease. Now, right here, I feel like it's kind of boring. He's doing this big punch. He comes up, and it just kind of floats in place. I wonder if I can exaggerate that a little bit more. Maybe try to get like a little bit of a dip in here. So as it goes up, we go up, down, up again. So it's a little anticipation, just a tiny one. We'll see how that feels. It might look terrible, but it just kind of felt dull. Okay, we'll see how that feels. And then here at the end, this is also feeling just a little flat. Okay. So you'll notice I'm putting some time into this, trying to make it look appealing. But once again, the hips are where all the motion comes from. So if I can get this to feel good, I'm in a good spot. The cog has something called breath in the channel box. It basically makes it feel like the character's breathing. Whoop, 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 whoop. Now, when your character does have a breath control, at least for most rigs, it is one of many controls you need to animate to get a good breath control. If you're just animating the one just breath, more than likely you're not going to get something that looks like a breath. It's just going to look very fake. So breathing is shoulders, chest, waist, head, neck. It's all, the whole area. All of that goes into creating a good breath for your character. Okay. Yeah, my Translate X is definitely a little bland right here. Just kind of flat. Let's see if we can maybe push this a little bit more here. We get a nice little ease. It comes through. Hold. Comes through. Sound effects. They are a must. Okay. I feel like this is still a little flat. I think it's my Translate Y. Just be a little higher right there. Okay. So I'm trying to push that hang time right in there. And then it comes through. Now here. So once again, see how even these are? They're not perfectly even, but I can try to exaggerate this a little bit more. I think this needs to kind of go out a little bit more here. So we get that nice roundness in there. And then let that momentum swing through. And we'll kind of push that ease right in here. Comes up. It's a little flat right there, so I pushed it too far. I want that momentum to come through, then kind of pause, and then he kicks back, and we suddenly get that nice big push back right here. Through, slows down here, that's good. Let's see how this feels. So I'm getting a nice clean arc now. And then here it kind of feels a little flat. Let's see if we can kind of exaggerate that. I think we move that down just a little bit more here. And then let's see if I can drop down and right through here, build up a little bit more momentum here. So this section right here from 74 to 84, it just kind of feels a little flat, like the character is just not moving through too well. So I want to exaggerate this. I think here, these two keys need to be pushed a little bit more because he's got all of this momentum. He comes down, you get that big swoop, and right now it just doesn't feel like that momentum's doing anything. And I really want to get it to feel like you have that arc in that motion. And I wonder if I can even maybe kind of make a little figure 8 pattern. So as he comes up, he goes up and then swoops across again. So we get, see if we can see this here. See that? So he comes up, that momentum carries him through, and then gets pulled back by that punch right there. So it's very slight, but trying to get that built in. And that should just be a little bit more interesting, hopefully. It might be a little too fast. We'll see. Now here, look at that. Look at that boring flat line right there. Ugh. That's better. There's no reason for that line to be flat. If he's moving and punching and doing all of this stuff, there should be some sort of arc, even if it's slight. Okay. Punches. That's fine. So here you'll notice that there's this kind of pop forward on the hip there. I actually like that because it goes with that punch. It's pulling him forward violently. So I'm actually going to keep that. But then here, yeah, this is fine. So he punches forward. Let's clean this up a little bit. So I'm just looking at my curve. That little bounce right there, I'm not a fan of. Right there, we talked about it earlier, but it's too much. It feels like the character is literally bouncing out versus kind of easing. So we'll just tweak that a little bit. There you go, that's better. I want a little anticipation, but not so much that it kills the rest of the motion. Okay. Swoops through. I think this could be pulled back just a little bit. Just create a little bit of a kind of small anticipation almost right in there. And then let the momentum swoop through. Okay. And then at the end is just kind of easing in. Is that what I want? Too much. This is actually something to always be aware of, is when you're working in auto tangents, your start and end tangents are always going to ease in and out very evenly. And it's good to try and push that. Otherwise, what's going to end up happening is your curves are always going to, or your animation is always going to feel like it just slows to a stop at the end. So always double check that. So same thing here. See how it just flattens out right there? Unless there's a reason to, it probably shouldn't just flatten out. I'm going to overshoot this just for the heck of it. I can actually feel no difference. How are you noticing such small changes? So I'm just looking at it like in the super close-up view here. This is to try and clean out all of the small little hitches and wiggles. So I should have actually buffered the curve so we could actually see it before and after. You're not going to see too much from the actual shot camera, but because I put so many breakdowns already, my main motion is in there. I'm not making huge, like, okay, change the arc in this section. Let's put in a huge overshoot in another section. It's really just cleaning up the flow of the arcs here so that I can get, for example, just a little bit more hang time right through there, which I think I can push even more still. It's very small changes. So even here, for example, like, maybe we'll just ease that out just a little bit more here. This you're not going to see because it's going to be from this angle. So this is going to be like from the top down view. This is where we're going to see these changes. So as it goes through, comes through, and we'll just kind of ease that a little bit. Make it a little rounder so it doesn't flatten out. And I could even switch this to the top view. So right here. So we can really see that arc. So notice here how as he comes through, there's this big sharp change right here. I might want to tweak that a little bit. So maybe push this. Let's see. That one or this one. Push this back just a little bit and round that out a bit more. We're not going to really see it too much, but we're going to feel it as he goes through this, where you just get this kind of nice round momentum to the turn here versus what was happening before, whereas this very sharp V shape. So we get something a little bit more like that. I can even build in a little bit more anticipation here. Back here. Just to build that up even more. Okay. So just a little bit. So now that comes through. Let's not change it too much here. Try and get too many big changes. So again, this is where you have to be very careful. You're making these changes, but you're trying not to make like just overly clean everything. If you do, you can lose what you had in your blocking. So it comes through. This curve I'm going to go super quick on. I think that definitely shouldn't be there. Clean that up. And then overall it's nice and round there, so that's good. Okay, and then let's just get that ending to ease in a little bit more. There we go. So with all of this, let's actually do a play blast of just the sphere. We did a first cleanup pass, which is just basically making sure, yeah, it looks decent. So now I'm just going to do a quick play blast of this. And let's browse for the right folder. And just do a quick play blast. What is dirt in animation? Dirt is imperfections. That's basically what it is. So, for example, if I do a nice clean arc here, our tendency as an animator is to try and make it absolutely perfect. But in reality, there can be a little hitch. So as I go down, my hand might pause and then drop. There might be a little shake to the hand. Dirt is any little imperfection. It's the muscle jiggles. It's the extra little bits that take out of the perfect, beautiful, like, curves. So let's see how this feels. Okay, not bad, but there's a few areas that I feel could be improved. So just looking at the appeal of the sphere, this is all we're really looking for. The main thing I'm feeling is that the drop kind of feels fast and then it just freezes. So it just kind of done. So I need to push a little bit more appeal right through here. I feel like I'm just losing too much momentum right in there. And then during that pause right here, I feel like the arc is a little weird. It's almost like, let me actually draw this out. It's very slight, but it feels like it's doing, there you go. Now my tablet's working. That and then that. So it kind of right here. It arcs up and then flat. So I need to push that. And then that pop up here. I do like the little loop I did. That helps. I think it could be toned down a little bit. But yeah, those are kind of the two main areas. And then at the end, it feels a little square right here. I feel like it goes up there and then down. I can push that appeal in there. Okay, so this is going to be mostly translate X. And a little bit of translate Y. So let's just quickly go through this. Perspective. Okay, so translate X and translate Y. Let's just quickly go through this. So I felt that as it was coming down right here, it's just a little too fast. I think it's like right here. This could be brought up just a tad more. I do want it fast because I want that to really hit hard. But then to kind of counter that, this should be a little slower here. Let's see. I'm going to just try this. What happens if we just ease out here? So now it comes up. And we go fast, and then it takes some time before it comes back up. So trying to get a little bit more weight in that curve. In that moment. And then we're going to add the hold a little bit more there before he comes back. And then maybe let's bring this down a little bit as well, so we can try to round out this arc, because this arc is feeling very flat. If you want to exaggerate an entire curve, so for example, maybe I want to make this just a little bit more round at the top, I can take my whole region. I'm going to use the region tool and use that to scale it up like that. And then I can just take these and let's just exaggerate that a little bit. So hopefully round that out a little. Let's actually make sure I don't break my character's legs while I'm doing that. Always a good thing to double check. Okay. I think that's better. We're feeling a little bit more of that roundness now. Okay. Come through. Now here, I was feeling this is just still a little flat, so I'm going to try to push this down a little bit more here. Yeah, try to contrast that. Okay. Comes up. I think maybe I can ease that in a little bit more. The next area was the translate X over here. This is just feeling a little flat. So right here, as it goes up, that area feels flat. I'm going to try to exaggerate that curve. A little bit more. There we go. So now that's nice and round. And then as it comes down, I think that could be exaggerated as well. But which way? I think these can maybe go up just a little higher. So he travels less at the top. And as he comes down, we feel that swoop a little bit more. And then right here, I felt like as he comes down here, it just kind of down and then over. So I'm going to ease this in a little bit more here. So now we get that nice swooping motion right through. Okay. Comes through. Okay. I think that gets most of it. I feel like this area here could use just a little bit more cleanup. So one thing I didn't do, I mentioned this earlier, is I forgot to set my buffer curves. When you're doing stuff like this, try to always set your buffer curves. It makes it much easier to compare and make sure that you're not actually breaking your animation. And if for some reason you accidentally do break your animation or do something that's like, ugh, doesn't work out, it's very easy to undo. Because I didn't do it, now I'm kind of like, I have to hope that it's better, which is not a bad thing. It's like, as long as you keep working at it, it'll get better. But it can be kind of frustrating at times to go, well, is it though? Is it actually better? And buffer curves, you'd actually be able to see, oh yeah, definitely, that's way better. Let's see, so I'm just trying to push this arc just a little bit more right in here. I feel like there's just something about that curve that I'm not a fan of. Okay, so let's do another quick play blast here, just to see how it feels, and then we can move on. Now, you'll notice I'm taking a lot of time on the hips. I did some time on the feet and some time on the hips. The reason I do this is because that's what's going to control everything else. If I can make sure that the hip feels interesting, and you'll notice that I always have my perspective view open. I'm not just hiding it completely. I want to make sure I don't break anything as I'm doing this. But if I can make sure that these look correct, okay, that's better already. I still feel like there's a little bit of a pause right there as it comes up. Like it just kind of goes there, and then it freezes a little bit right here. But it's not bad. At this point, I think it's just tiny polish. But the ending definitely feels better. That swoop at the end feels much nicer. It just feels a little bit more visually interesting. Yeah, I think I need a little bit more momentum. We've got this fast motion and then it just stops. All the momentum just disappears. I need to keep that momentum going there. But for now, we'll say, okay, hips done. At this point, it's nitpicky stuff. So let's go back to our whole shot. So go back in, show our polygons, and don't need the motion trail here. At this point, the rest of the shot should still be pretty much intact. We didn't do any big changes, so there's going to be a few small like spacing issues. So for example, we changed the ending here, so his nose now is going forward instead of backwards right there. We watch that spacing. So little things like that that'll have to be tweaked, but nothing much. It's really in a good spot at this point in terms of the hips and the body. So at this point, what do? We've got our feet kind of blocked in decently. They can be polished and refined, but they are fixed for the most part. There's no major issues as I play through here. Just a few little spacing things, but that's more of a refinement area. We've done the hips. At this point, it's just making sure that the spine is working decently. So what I'll do now, and this is something I like to do, is I work in steps. So we did the hips. Now let's make sure the spine is working. Now for the spine, this can be very helpful is to set the rig into proxy mode, which is just this very low res version. And then I'm going to turn off the arms and head. If your rig doesn't have this, you can actually just select the faces and hide them. But now we just have this. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that this feels interesting. And you'll notice that there's a little bit of like jerkiness in here, especially on that punching. This is what's kind of making certain things not read correctly. Is that like weird shake? It needs to be refined just a little bit more. But from here, we know that the hips are working because we actually already did just a basic hip pass. We know that the feet are working. So at this point, anything that we see is most likely an issue with maybe the rotation of the hips or the rotation of the spine. So that simplifies it for us. We can just go through little stick arms. This is what happens when you still see the joints. It actually kind of looks cool. I do like seeing that. Normally I don't like seeing joints turned on because it makes things hard to select, but it is cool. Little sticky fingers. So let me actually turn off skeleton right here. So I'll just go to show, joints, turn that off right there. So with this, let's take the hip control first. So the hip control, the reason I'm selecting this is we need to do the rotations on the hip. And I just want to make sure that there's nothing major that's going on here. Nothing that's going to be like really throwing things off in a weird way. So I'm just going through and looking through my curves. So this is the rotate X, the forward rotation. He goes down. Same thing as I was doing before, just kind of looking through the curve. And it's, once again, it's not a matter of just going through and cleaning indiscriminately. Oh, there's a little wiggle. Smooth it out. No. What's happening? So this is the forward rotation. He bends down, okay? So when we go down, this is the hips kind of angling back. So as he comes down, he's crunching, so his hips angle back. That's good. And then he hits here, and we get this nice impact right there. I like that. I don't want it to just be smooth. If I take this here, you'll notice how everything just kind of suddenly his back twists backwards there. No, I want this nice big impact in there. So yay, that's good. That feels good. As he comes through, starts to straighten out. That's good there. This feels a little linear right here. So I might just try to exaggerate the spacing here a little bit. Just to kind of get an idea of what's going on. And before I do anything else, while I'm remembering it, I'm going to just select all my curves and buffer them. Because I should, even though I didn't do it before, I should do it now at least. Let's see. So let's push that. So you can see it's not a big difference. I just kind of push this one key down, but it is enough that we get at least a little bit of variation in there. So it goes through, up. Okay, now he comes back. His spine is starting to bend. Right here, it feels like this should kind of go back a little bit more. Now, as you're doing your rotate X on the hips, one thing that can be helpful is to do the rotate X on the spine at the same time. Just because they kind of work in tandem. So for example, let me undo this. You'll notice that as I adjust my rotate X on the hips here, where were we? Right here, the spine, as I move this, is going to affect the spine quite a bit. So it's good to be able to track that and make sure that you're not making any big, huge changes. Now this is where it can be kind of tricky. Okay, I move this back. Oh wait, but now how far forward do I have to go with the spine? This is where I like to use something like blue pencil, or you can use the grease pencil tool. Because I know that my spacing is pretty decent already, and I don't want my poses to change a huge amount. So what I can do is just take this and I'm just going to mark down where like a point is here. So that point right there on the neck. Now I can bring this back, make that nice exaggerated arc there. Go into the spine, take my rotate X, and just bring that back. Done. Haha. So you can very easily tweak poses and kind of get them back into position without having to deal with the frustration of, wait, was that exactly where it was? Am I ruining something here? Okay, this key, let's just clean that out. A lot of this is going to be the rotate Y. The rotate Y is causing some major issues. Okay, here. The hips just hit a wall right there. You can see how it just flattens out. Not a fan of that typically. So what's happening? He's punching, so we can feel that punch go forward. And then he recoils and kind of gets into this hold. But as he punches, what would happen? He punches, his abs would come in, and as he kind of comes back and pulls back, his hips should kind of open up a little bit more here. It shouldn't just flatten out. So we get that kind of motion, that reverb before. Okay, yeah, that's definitely an issue with the rotate Z there. Rotate Z and rotate Y. Oh, also, why would the X do that? So this is another punch right here. So we can feel that shoulder right here going forward into the punch. And it's just like this weird hitch happening. So let's just smooth that out. Ease, oops, make sure I don't have two keys selected there. Ease that up a little bit. And okay, so that was the rotate X, not too bad, nothing too major. I could also do the rotate X of the chest as well. So hips and chest, all of the rotations kind of play into each other. So the order you do this in is up to you. There's no like, well, you have to do it all the hip first and all the chest after. It's whatever you makes sense to you for this moment. For me, I want to make sure that this forward lean makes sense. So right here, I'm getting a little spacing issue. See how the chest sinks in right here? And it kind of stops moving. So I want to exaggerate that a little bit. To me, it doesn't make sense that the spacing would kind of pause there and then keep moving. So let's see. I like the curve that's happening in the chest there. So I might just tweak the curve in the hips. So now, as he goes through, that chest should keep going forward here. A little too fast. There we go. So now it doesn't have that weird little pause. It slows down, which is okay, but it doesn't freeze completely and like have a little backwards motion. I'm just watching that arc of the neck there. Okay. Let's look for any other weird inconsistencies here. We get this weird block right here. So he comes down, his neck is leading, if I remember correctly. Always good thing to make sure you know what's happening in your shot. So his neck is leading. I want the body to stay a little stiff and then crunches in. Now here, I might actually add another breakdown here, just to help really sell this. So do I want to ease that out where we get a little crunch in the hips first and then the spine goes? Or do we want to favor the other way, where he comes in and you just feel that like right in the ribs and then he hits down there? I think that's kind of what I want, is this really strong just feeling right in there, because the arms are throwing the weight down. So we go through there. Now he stops crunching here a little bit. Is that what I really want? Well, anatomically there is a point where your ribs can't rotate anymore. So this is not a bad thing, having it kind of just stop very abruptly. And it creates this nice bounce feeling that I really like. So we're going to keep that. This is where, like, if I was to just clean up my curves and go, oh, let's just clean things up. Boop. Suddenly we lose. Look at, I've just ruined the arc right there. And we lose that whole like hit and wiggle in that whole character. So this is good. I want that. If anything, the big takeaway I want everyone to get from this is don't just globally clean up your arcs and just smooth them out like crazy. That is going to kill your shots. Okay, now it comes through. I think here I can try to even this out just for cleanliness sake. Okay. So it comes back. I'm watching the spacing of the neck. I could use an arc tracker, honestly, for this, but I'm not trying to refine it so much yet that it's like it's necessary to use an arc tracker. So for me, it's mostly just getting that feeling in there. Okay, so it comes through, goes forward. Okay, and we start getting into the punching, which now also starts getting into these offsets in the curve, which is fine because he's so crunched up. Okay, punches. Let's see, can I push this back a little bit more? Yeah, I think that works. We're doing this violent punching animation and nice, beautiful, soft music. Okay, now here, we're getting this kind of weird pop back. So he punches, he's crunching in. And what's happening, let's kind of bring back the arms here for just a second so we can see this a little bit more clearly. So see here how he punches forward, and then automatically, if we look at the spine curves here, his body is bouncing. So it goes past, and then it's just stopping its motion. Does that make sense? Like, this is where, as you're animating, you need to start asking yourself, does this make sense? Is this what we want? In this case, he punches forward, and when it sucks that I can't move my arms properly because I torse them muscles. So if you punch forward really hard, there's going to be a jolt in the body. But what's going to happen first is that jolt is going to go in the arm. So your arm overextends and bounces back, and then that motion transfers into the body. If everything happens at the same time, where it goes forward and back like this, it just feels stiff. You want the arm to stretch, bounce back, and then the arm takes it. The body takes it. So right here, what we're getting is there's our frame for the punch, and the body automatically reacts the very next frame. Doesn't make sense. So I'm going to try to exaggerate this. Now, as the arm comes back, the body is still trying to curl in before it comes back afterwards. So I'm thinking through my animation, even though I'm in splines now, I'm trying to think, okay, how is the body going to react? What are the body mechanics here? And I can exaggerate that even more, especially with the rotate Y. When we get into the rotate Y here, so that's going to be this one, that's the same thing. What's making these punches feel really like janky and just not fun is that the rotate Y is you hit that punch and then the whole body locks back. So if I do this, I'm going to exaggerate this, suddenly you get that punch and see how the arm pulls back first and then the body pulls back? That's going to make the difference. We're going to get to that when we get to the rotate Y, but it's that lead and follow. What's happening first? What's happening second? So in this case, punch comes back. He crunches in a little bit more. That's fine. And then here, I think, see how as he's going back, the spine is curling back the moment that the fist goes forward. I can pull that back just a little bit here. So we just get a little bit more of a lead and follow there. So watch that that neck, it goes back and then it's bouncing right here. It goes back and then forward right away. I think I can exaggerate that a little bit, and I think that could be done in the hips. So let's see here. What are the hips doing? Yeah. I think this can be dragged back a little bit. So as he punches, I think I might even add another key in here. It'll drag the whole chest back before going forward. So now just try to ignore the big weird pop in the rotate Y. If we just watch the body, it should be better. Okay. Let's finish the spine there. Oh, there's definitely some weirdness going on here. So he punches, there's going to be a big change there. But then as he comes back here, why is there this wiggle? That doesn't really make sense. He's standing up. There should be maybe like, as he kind of, his feet hit the ground and his hips kind of right themselves, there might be kind of a like an impact right here, something like that, where you get that kind of that weight going through, but there really shouldn't be anything happening right here because this is just him righting himself. So I'm actually going to clean that up. And we'll just try to get that very slight motion in the body there. Make it a little smaller. And there we go. Okay. So that's the rotate X. Is it done? No, because we're going to have some back and forth. As we go into the rotate Y and all of the other stuff, there's going to be some back and forth on there, but let's do the rotate Y first, because that's the one where we were seeing a lot of weirdness. And I'm just going to go here and I'm going to turn off my display. I always forget where it is. Go. Play. Oh, right there. Show namespace. So I mentioned this yesterday. Notice how in the channel box here, sorry, the outliner of the graph editor. We can't see which control name this is because there's a namespace in front of it. If you right click and go to display, you can turn off show namespace, and now you can see the control. Much easier. So now I can see when I'm selecting the cog and when I'm selecting everything else. Let's see, I don't know why I didn't expect you to be in the Maya graph editor. I'm always in the Maya graph editor. The graph editor is where I live. Even when I'm doing blocking, I usually have it open. Okay. So rotate Y. So this is the twist of the body. So as the character comes through, we've got our cog here. I'm going to do both at the same time now. The hips and the spine all together. So the spine is going up. It's kind of flattening out here. Is that bad? Not necessarily, but maybe I can just add a little bit more of a moving hold in there. So just kind of add a little bit more twist. Maybe, let's see if we can exaggerate that a little bit more. Never be afraid of trying to exaggerate. If you're just moving curves just willy-nilly for no reason, yeah, that can kind of be destructive. But exaggeration is not a bad thing. And Ermagerd, hey, welcome to the stream. Hopefully you're enjoying it. Just for anyone who's new here, this is an animation stream, but very specifically it's a stream to help all of you. So if you have animation questions, if you're not sure about something to do with animation, whether it's a technique or a workflow question, whatever it is, definitely feel free to ask. So as he's coming down, I kind of want a little bit more twist on one side versus another. So I'm going to just try to exaggerate that twist a little bit more. You can see the old curve, how it was flat and boring. I'm just trying to exaggerate that. Okay. This is where, if you have multiple monitors, it can be very nice because I can just put the graph editor on the other window and you see it just nice and big and full screen. Ooh, a character model, nice. I do character sculpting a lot, although I do like modeling as well. It's a lot of fun. I had to take more animation classes than I cared to in school. Animation is tough, especially if it's not what you really want to do. It's just kind of like, more. But yeah, character modeling is a lot of fun. Oh, rigging. I love rigging. I love the idea of rigging. The actual concept and doing the rigging, I just don't have the patience for it as much as I would like to. Especially like the skin painting and the blend shapes and all of that. Oh, so hard. So I'm looking through here and I'm noticing the body kind of has like you can see that hitch right there. I'm just trying to figure out where that is. What is causing that? I think it might be my rotate X, or sorry, rotate Z. So I'm not going to worry too much about it just yet, but I'm going to make note. And this is a nice, interesting little thing. Let's say, oh, you know, there's a little pop here. I need to remember this. Well, write it down or use the bookmark tool that we showed earlier. So I can go to my timeline and let's put it in red. So this is going to be a note and there's going to be we'll just call it neck pop right there. Now you're not going to see the name, unfortunately, but I can at least have that marker there. And I believe if I go to edit here, so select that, edit, neck pop. So now if I go maybe like an hour later, I've forgotten about it and I go, oh wait, I've got a little thing here. What is it? Oh yeah, there's a neck pop. Let's go through and fix that. So bookmarks are a great way to just keep track of little things like that. I will admit I don't use it all that often because I'm used to just writing it down on a piece of paper instead. But it is something I've been trying to use a little bit more. Okay, so he comes back through here. We're getting, so far the rotate Y has been like, oh, it's not so bad. A little touch here, a little tweak there. Oh, what a big change. When we get into here, this is where everything's going to fall apart in just horrible ways, but where we're going to be able to do some big, interesting changes. Okay, so the hips come through. I'm going to do the hips first because the hips and the chest are kind of separate in a sense here, just because of the leg raising and then the punching. There is going to be a connection there, but it's going to be slight. So his hips, he comes down, his right leg is kicking forward, which means that that right hip should also kick forward there a little bit. Now in this case it's going back because of the punch. It's going to counter that arm swinging through. So let's kind of push that a little bit, avoid that weird plateau we were getting. And then let's ease this out a little bit more here. So we've got that punch. So once again, we need to think of the lead and follow. The hips are going to be attached to what's happening with the spine. So if he's punching forward with his left arm here, what's going to happen is that the momentum of that punch is going to twist the entire body. So even the hips, even though they will try to counter that, you will get this nice big impact in the whole body. And that's what we had in our curve here. See how it kind of goes up and then down just a little bit. But it's happening on the very frame that the punch is happening, which means that instead of feeling like the body is connected and like we've got all of these different muscles activating at different times, it feels like it's an action figure that's just being spun in place to create the feeling of a punch. So I want to hold that back a little bit, ease this so that we feel it in the chest first, and then the hips come down and through. So punch, and you can see here now, it's a very small change, but watch the hips. Punch, twist in the hips. So punch, twist. It's a very small thing, but you're going to feel that. So same thing here. Punch, and then twist. Now here, it's kind of a little too sharp and boring right there. I'm going to just add another key and just ease that out just a little bit more. So now punch, and then you feel that hip kind of taking the weight afterwards, 1 or 2 frames after. Okay, so we get that momentum. He's got that twist. This is nice, a moving hold. I think I can just kind of push it so it eases a little bit more there. And then once again, we've got that punch and the hip is reacting at the exact same frame. So I'm going to offset that and add another key here. So now we get, this is our rotate X as well, or sorry, rotate Z is doing this twist. But now we get that arm leading and then we get the twist of the hips here. Now it's slowing down here. Should it slow down? I don't think so. It doesn't really make sense that it would slow down. He's just thrown a punch and then his hips are slowing down right after, like 2 frames after. It doesn't make sense. The black lines, those are my buffer curves. So it shows me what the curve used to look like. And I always like to turn this on because it lets me quickly see what I'm doing and kind of compare. And it's also like a super undo. So maybe I'm working and I figure out, oh shoot, I just ruined this entire curve. I can't really undo the whole thing because I'd lose everything. But I can just swap the curve and now you can kind of compare before and after. So buffer curves are super helpful. So like right here, how did the pose look before? So very, very nice. I highly recommend using buffer curves. One of my favorite features in Maya. I don't think Blender has buffer curves, unfortunately, which is a shame because it is one of my like go-to features. Hopefully they'll add some form of buffer curve soon. Okay. So I think that's pretty much it for the... Oh, do they have it ghost curves? Okay, cool. I'll have to look for that. I remember looking for it before and it's like, oh no, they don't have it. No. Oh, so sad. Okay. So we've got the hips. We might go in and make some small changes, but let's go into the twist of the body now. So this is the spine. So all up here. So first punch. As he punches, his shoulders are going to kind of follow along with. So right there, that's good. I think right through here, it's going kind of the opposite way. I wonder if I can tweak that. Do I want to? It does simplify it. So what's happening in my shot right now is as he's punching, he's throwing his arm forward, but he's going back at the same time. So you see here how the arm goes forward there. But if I continue this, see how it's going the opposite way? Now that is not necessarily a bad thing, but it does make it a little less dynamic. And it makes a lot more like just up and down, up and down. So in 2 frames, it goes 1, 2 up, 1, 2 down, 1, 2, 3 up. So it kind of makes it bouncy for no reason. So I think I might try to exaggerate the shoulder here, going with the arm. And that's just going to clean it up, make it a little bit more visually interesting. So this, we were talking about dirt in animation before. This would be an area that would be considered dirt. So the animation ideal would be to clean this up, make this nice and smooth. The kind of VFX, like making things feel more realistic, would be to have this, because our bodies do have these little like tweaks and jerks that can happen that would kind of make this a little rougher. So this is where you have that choice. Do I want to add the dirt in the animation, make it imperfect, but potentially get some areas where it kind of hitches in weird ways? Or do I make it nice and clean, but then sometimes it can be too clean. It can look fake and just too perfect. So yeah, it's something that neither is wrong. So this is not wrong, this is not wrong, but it's a choice. And I want to make that choice consciously. And I'm gonna lean towards this for now, but let's actually put another marker. And this is not a problem, so I'll put this as, let's do purple. And let's go our rotate Y, dirt. So there we go. So now we at least keep it in mind for later. Okay. So goes through. Now this is where we're really going to start getting it, because we're getting into the strong punches. So he comes back. His body is going up with the arm. Perfect. And then he's ready to throw the punch. His chest is going to lead the action here. That's good. But you can see how it's kind of linear right here. I kind of want to exaggerate that a little bit more. So I'm going to have it ease just a little bit. So we feel that arm come in. Then you feel the chest go out here. So you really feel that strong punch. And then right away his chest is retreating. So this is not correct. Instead, I think I'm going to just offset this key and push this past a little bit. So something like this. So now he punches and his chest is still going forward as the arm catches ever so slightly. Now it comes back. Let's ease that a little bit. So punch goes through. And once again, that chest is just bouncing back. So I'm going to try and push this curve just a little bit more. So punch, you feel the arm starting to come back. See, that pulls the chest. And then here, the chest needs to lead a lot more right there. So I'm actually gonna put this back just a little bit. I need a little bit more time. Okay. So here I really want that chest to lead. So punch, arm comes in, chest starts to rotate. Punch through. Comes through. And then on the pullback, we can ease that a little bit more. The arm is definitely going to help a lot here. The arm right now is just not feeling great. So punch. Really ease that in. So it's not a huge change. You can see on the curve. It's not big, but we're just pushing the eases in through there. Presume file that's not corrupted though, so I think I'll just go back to that. Okay. If that line of code isn't there, it could just be that Maya updated. That I wrote that article a long time ago, so it could just be the update that did that. But even then, sometimes it's easier just to kind of go back, unfortunately. Hopefully it's not too much of a change. Okay. So I want the arm to come back and then feel the chest rotate in. I kind of feel like the chest could rotate even more here. Like right there, I really want that. I want that connection between the arms and the chest. So right here, the punch is happening, but the chest is just kind of following with. I think that can happen like one frame sooner, where we feel that twist of the chest a little sooner right there. So twist of the chest. Okay, that's too slow. Twist of the chest. Yeah, something more like that. Okay. Get that twist in there. And then it's already bouncing back, which I'm not a fan of. So I'm going to just push that a little bit more around like so. Then let's ease that in. Yeah, there's definitely something going on here. I think it's my rotate Z. So I don't have to put a bookmark there because I'm going to be going through the rotate Z afterwards, but something to keep in mind. Now the curve is just flattening out here. If the arm is swinging back, it doesn't make sense that the curve would just flatten out like that. So I'm just going to try and clean this up a little bit. Might slow down a bit, but shouldn't stop. Okay. And then there's a bit at the end that's feeling a little weird. Okay. So already that makes a big difference in that punching. The shoulders and the arms, and not the clavicles, just the twist of the body, is starting to feel a lot more in tune with each other versus just being totally separate motions. Now, let's look at our rotate Z, because there's definitely some stuff. Is this? Yeah, see there? Right there. That's definitely something going weird right there. So let's just start from the beginning. So we've got our cog. That's going to be this one. And we'll go through. Okay, why is it doing this? The spine is rotating, so this is the twist side to side. See how the shoulders are just kind of going up and then freezing? Let's see if we can just push that a little bit. Yeah, I think that's a little bit better. The rotate Z usually is not super big. Like, we're not going to see a bunch of huge changes, but this is where we're also going to be able to really refine our curves and our arcs through the body. So I could maybe drag this back just a little bit here. So down. Good. He's kind of scrunching up on one side. So he comes down and bounces. Do I want that? Could I ease this up a little bit? No, definitely don't want to do that. See how I'm getting this kind of pop right there? It's happening right here. 45 to 55. I think part of that what is it? Might be my translations. But I think it's just needing to overshoot this because that curve is just flattening out. It's causing the body to list over to the side a little too much. I'm going to try to exaggerate this. And there you go. We clean up that pop. Now we're getting a little bit more of a pop here because the curve suddenly makes no sense. But that should clean that up. Essentially, we're just adding a little bit more drag. Okay. Let's see. You seem to... Oh, you only see them if you move a key. Oh, wait. I missed something. Does buffer curves only work if you are moving things through the graph editor? No, they're active all the time, but you just see them in the graph editor. They show you a preview of what your curves used to look like. So even if I was to manipulate something, like if I change my rotate Z here, you can see the buffer curve still. I just like to work in the graph editor, so it's just makes it easier for me to get these fine motions. And especially because my blocking is pretty solid in terms of getting all the poses in, I don't need to really work in the viewport anymore and make big changes in here. So right here, we've got the body twisting back. This is good. One thing I'm kind of wondering here. So this moment here is good. The head is throwing himself back over screen right. And that's twisting his hips right here. The thing I'm wondering is right here, why would the hips stop? Should it keep going this way? Now, if I do that, what ends up happening is you get this twist in the body now. That doesn't really make sense. So, how can I make this work so the curves make sense? I think partly it's as this goes forward here, the body needs to kind of twist. So we get that pull, and then watch that spacing. Right here, it's slowing down a little too much. So now we get that pull, still getting a little hitch. So pull that down, pull this down. Let's see. Might be this right here. Let's just try to clean that up. So it comes through. Yeah, not bad. There's still kind of a little hitch there, but I think that's happening from one of the translations. But now that kind of makes more sense. What wasn't making sense was he's throwing himself over and then the rotation of his hips stop right there. So it just kind of freezes and then tips again. So it's like tip, stop, tip. And it should really just, he's throwing himself to the side. It should just like literally throw himself over. I think I'm gonna just try to push that curve in there. Okay, I can refine the spacing a little bit later. Okay, now he throws the punch. We get this motion right here where his body is countering that. That's fine. I like that because this is a weak punch. This works well, but similar to what we were having before, it doesn't feel right that it should bounce right after he punches. So I'm going to try to push that ease a little bit there. And then let's kind of ease that out here. Now we get that crunch, basically that shoulder coming up in order to throw the next punch. And I can try to exaggerate that a little bit more here. So up and over. So we feel that whole body twisting in to get that punch through. Now, as this is happening, what are the hips doing? They land on that side. I think this is good. Basically, what's happening is that the hips, they're being supported on that side. So when he lands on that leg and all that weight comes down, the screen left side is going to drop a little bit from the weight. So that makes sense. Here, it shouldn't really flatten out. There should almost never be a reason for a curve to be perfectly flat. There's just that would mean that all momentum has stopped on the entire character, which makes no sense. Let's ease that a little bit more, so get a little bit more twist in there. What's the spine doing here? Okay, the spine throws the punch. We get that twist, good. Throws the punch, and it's bouncing back right away. So he throws the punch. It's going down. I wonder if I need to tweak this. Here it's going up. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so this is good. So he throws the punch here, and his body needs to keep reacting a few frames after. So he's punching on that side, so he's gonna crunch on that side. He's not opening himself up, so he's punching and doing this kind of pull down here. So I'm gonna try to exaggerate that. And now we feel that punch hit, and you can feel it in the ribs right there. How it keeps going down there, which then leads into this kind of round motion that goes into the next punch. And once again, this one needs to react a little later. I think this might be happening a little too soon as well. So let's ease that. Go. And keep that going through just a little longer. So I want that punch to happen, that the reaction and the weight of that arm coming through and down should keep the body going down. So you can see how that arm coming down brings the body in on that side. So we got that weight in there. Now here we get this moving hold. Let's see if we can. So this is where we're getting this really janky motion here. Is this trying to get out of this moving hold? So essentially what I want here, and just trying to feel it out, is as he goes through, instead of just holding and then he locks in, I could have him hold and like twist down and then punch. So it's almost like all the muscles in his side are bunching up to throw the next punch. So we get something like that. Now that's not going to be quite right. But now instead of that big pop, we're getting kind of an anticipation in there. So he takes the weight. And then we start to come down here. We're getting a little bit too much of a pop right in there. I think it's a mixture of a few different things. Partly I think it's the hips are just rotating too much, which are causing the body to feel like it's just twisting around and falling over. There we go. So I want that nice twist. I could add a little bit more rotate X in the spine there. And then a little bit more rotate Y right there. And he punches forward. We get that lead of the chest there, but then it shouldn't just stop like I have it here. It should keep going. If he's throwing weight into that punch, we need to feel that go through. So punch, back, and then let's just drag that body. So right here, I think it's my hips. Yeah, they're traveling too fast right there. As he's going through, I could lead a little bit more with the hips there. And let's drag the spine just a little bit. Okay. So go through. I'm watching the neck right here. As he's going through, I'm just going to try to drag his body back. So we feel that kind of the hips leading right in there. And then the neck catches up as the hips slow down. There we go. So that gets rid of that pop there. And now the punching should feel much stronger already. The arms still need a lot of work, but the body should feel better. I feel like there's still something like right in here. The chest is rotating a little too quick. We need a little bit of a kind of ease in here. It comes through. Yeah, it's happening just a little too fast here. Let's try to ease this out just a little bit more. See how something like this feels. Yeah, that's a little better. You can really see how the curve is different from what it used to be. Okay, how does that feel? No, still not right. It goes through. Pulls through. I want the body to crunch on that side. That's good. Changes direction, and this is changing too fast here. I'm just trying to think of the physicality. That's changing too fast there. I'm watching the neck as I'm going through there. I think there's a little bit of rotate Y as well. And then yeah, that's way too fast now. So now it goes through. And we get that 1, 2, 3. I think. No, other way. There you go. I think that's better. Okay, so let's look at our rotate Y, double check that. Yeah, the rotate Y definitely going to be causing some issues here if I'm not careful. There we go. Let's see, how does it feel? Punch, punch, punch. There's something in the chest there. I like the feeling of the whole body kind of swinging around. I think I can tone it down though. Mostly because if they're spinning around that much, it makes it feel like they're very light on their feet, and this person is on one foot trying to stay balanced. If they're moving around that much, it's gonna be weird. I want this to feel tighter. I'm just going to bring that down. A little less. There you go. There we go. Quick question. Are you manipulating the IK chest control at all? No, I'm just using all the FK. I made an error blocking with the chest IK rather than FK's free spine controls. Yeah, so I'm just using FK and I use all three of them at the same time. When was the last time I took a sip? I don't remember. Thanks for the reminder. So let's see how this feels. Yeah, that already feels way better. There's still a little funkiness going on in that punching. Like right in here. Now, just to double check, what I'm going to do is turn off the arms. Oops, I don't want gaming experience. The thing that could be causing the issue is just the arms because we haven't touched them yet. I'm just going to double check. Okay, so that's definitely better. I feel like the range of rotation is a little too high here, though. The amount that his chest is spinning is making it so that it feels like his back should break. So I'm going to try to tone this down a little bit. So, for example, here, as the character punches, let's just take all of that and tone that down a little. Now I'm gonna have to tone down the rotate Z as well. And then he goes through there. Okay, so that's not bad. Okay, let's look at our rotate Z. And yeah, that's definitely just a little too far. So let's take this, tone it down. And this is where it's nice having your buffer curves because I can see where the peak was before, how high I had it before, and I can kind of use that as a guideline. Okay, we're also getting kind of this big twist in the body there. I'm not a huge fan of that. I'm going to try to ease that out. That's a little bit better. Okay, let's see how this feels. Better. Now, the big thing I'm trying to avoid looking at is the actual shoulders, because that's actually the clavicles. You can see them bouncing around. I'm just trying to focus on the chest. And overall, it's looking decent. There's still like a weird hitch going on. Like right here, that rotation feels too linear. Yeah, I can see it right there, right through here. See how that's just kind of a straight line right there? If I was to actually put it into linear mode, see how it's not much of a difference? So let's really ease that out. I could even get rid of those and kind of exaggerate that curve there. So now it comes through, ease, fast. This is one of the I wouldn't call it a secret, but if you're trying to get fast motion to read correctly, the big thing is to just push the holds. So we've got this fast back and forth, and instead of just going where it's just spinning, you don't really read that when a character is just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's just like spin, 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 spin. What you do is you hold. So hold, spin, hold, spin, hold, spin, hold. So as I'm doing these poses, I want to make sure that we hold here, really ease out, and then snap, and then into the next hold. And what that's going to do is make it so that we still get the feeling of speed, but we also read what's happening. Otherwise, what'll happen is our eyes just can't track it. Here we're getting a weird... The rotation forward as he's starting to take his step forward here is fighting with the rotate Y and the rotate Z. They're all kind of fighting each other and making these weird arcs. So if you watch the kind of neck area, it goes forward, down, up, forward, back, forward. Like it's zigzagging all over the place. So I need to clean that up. And just to kind of prove it, let's actually just track this control here. And oops, wrong key there. You can see, look at that arc. See how it goes forward, back, forward, back, forward. It's too messy. We've got the main motions in there, especially when you consider the previous punches were so nice. But like that last one is just... ugh. So I need to go through here and just clean this up. And this can be a lot of different things. So I'm just going to try and work through this. Okay, so we have the first segment here where he punches and then we get that little bit of a back. This is not a bad thing. It doesn't always have to be perfectly like everything's going back and back and back. So I'm not too worried about this, but I can still try to maybe clean up some stuff. So I'm just going to look at my curve, see if anything stands out. Let's ease that a little bit. So it just kind of softens that up a little bit. I think it's my... which one is it? My rotate X? X or Y is causing this. Yeah, it's the Y. So I'm just going to try and exaggerate that spacing here. And it's just going to soften that change in there. So just trying to fine tune this as much as I can. Just by pushing the arcs just a little bit here. You can see how that suddenly, it's moving back, and we still get that little pause, but it is continually moving backwards. Even here to here, it's still technically moving backwards. So we get a pause in there, but we don't get the mess of what we had before. Now here, I feel like we could push that arc a little bit more, so this is most likely going to be rotate X. Okay, that's not getting me where I want it to go. So let's try rotate Y. No. Okay, it's going to be a mixture of everything. Now, this is where I'm working in the graphitor, Man, I just want to get this, like, basically I want this dot, and this is where, again, grease pencils are very useful. I want that dot to be right. Make sure I actually turn that on. There. I want that dot to be right there. It's a little big. Okay, right. Like there. So we push that arc. Well, I could try to use the graph editor for that. Or I can just take my manipulator and just kind of nudge it into place. Kind of right there. There we go. Done. So I marked where I wanted it, and then I just put it in place. And now I can look at my curves and see what happened and work on any cleanup that I might need to do just to avoid pops or wiggles. Okay. Yeah, there's definitely going to be a little bit of an issue there. So don't be afraid to put things into the position you need them to be. Okay, and then I think that's pretty much it. This is one of the key things with, like, when you're doing splines, we talk about spline cleanup a lot, like cleaning up the curves and all that. There are times where just instead of trying to worry about what your curves are doing, just put it where you want it to be. Don't worry about all of these, like, specifics. Okay, it has to be, this curve has to ease in and out and it has to be clean and whatnot. No, you want that arc? Just draw it out, draw the arc that you want this thing to have, and then just put it there. So for example, here, coming up, and I feel like right there, this change of direction just doesn't make sense to me. Why is it going up? It's still going screen right here, and then it goes left and then right again. Doesn't really make sense. To me, it should be there. Like, when you're this close, the grease pencil tool kind of gets a little tricky. It's like slightly off from my cursor. There, and then kind of round this out right here. It should be a nice round arc going through there. So I could fight the graph editor, which honestly, that's not a bad thing. Or I could just take this and put it into place. And then this will go over there. And there you go. There's my arc. Are you changing the rotation of the body or gimbal? I'm not sure what you mean. I'm not using gimbal mode. I almost never use gimbal mode. I'm not a fan of gimbal mode. It's good for certain areas, but in general, I just find it more of a pain than anything. And I want the body to be in the position I want it to be. I don't want to have to worry about, okay, this is the X, this is the Z, this is the whatever. No, I just want to put the body where I want it, and then I make it work. So yeah, I don't use gimbal mode. I'll use it once in a while for small things, but so straight manipulating the chest controller, yeah. So for example, one area that I use gimbal mode is when I just want to change one attribute, but I never switch to gimbal mode. If you just click on the attributes here, this will actually set you into gimbal mode. So you can see how the rotation or the manipulator here, when I click on it, see how it changes? That's it changing into gimbal mode. If I actually just take this and then switch to gimbal mode here, you can see it does the same thing. So if ever I do need to just make sure I animate one attribute without being in object or world, I never switch to gimbal. I just click in here and then I'm ready to do it. So that's my typical workflow. So now it comes through. Now we don't get that weird back and forth, back and forth. Even here, I feel like I could clean that up. Like, just take that one key and just like nudge it to be a little cleaner. And then clean up my curves. And then here, see how it bounces? We get that V shape. I am really not a fan of these types of curves. This just kills a lot of motion. So I want it to round out. So here, I think it's going to be just pushing the rotate X a little bit. And you see how as I move this, it's changing the whole curve before and after. I don't want that. I know that in this position, this is good. So right here, that's good. We'll keep that there. Let's hit S to set a key. And then I'll go to the next pose and then tweak that. And just get a little bit of a roundness in there. It's not going to be much. But even here, I can maybe round this out just a tad. Like so. So now you can see how it doesn't follow the same path. There's a little bit of a change. And then here, I think I can just drag this back a little bit more. Ease that out. We get that drag in there. I still feel like it's bouncing a little bit, so I'm just going to see what's causing that. And I think I can see it right here. So it's going back, and then it stops. This is my rotate X. I just need to clean it up. So rotate X goes through. Okay. Comes through. And then here, need to push that a lot more. Okay. And let's just clean up some curves here. Okay. I think you can select the FK nodes on the motion trail and actually use the move to adjust that. Yeah, so if I click and drag here, well, this is on the normal editable motion trails, not the Animbot one. I don't know if the Animbot one does this. You can actually move the trail and move it in there. I never use that, never. The big reason is that it only works on the translations, not the rotations, which when I'm doing the spine controls here, it's all rotation. The whole spine is rotation, which means that changing any of those dots won't make a difference. And then not only that, but when you're working on those dots, it's hit or miss, because basically you're putting all of the control of how it's going to move those dots back into Maya's hands. It's going to determine, is it going to ease out? Is it going to do something else? You're giving up all of the control to Maya, and I am not a fan of that. So I never use those dots. It's not a bad thing. Like I know some people who do use them and it works really well, but for me it's just, I feel like I would be fighting the program more than anything. And like, I know what I want and I'm trying to get it there, and it's like, I could do this in so many easier ways. Okay, so now we come through, and there you go, nice and clean. There we go. So mixture of graph editor, viewport, and tracking your arcs manually. But it all works out in the end. So there's no like moment where, well, you're only in the graph editor now, that's it, no more working in the viewport. Oh, you're tracking arcs, there's no more going back to so and so. It's a continual process. So I still feel like this bounces a little too much here, but there we go. That should be better. There we go. Is there a shortcut to go to the frame of the key you have selected? If you have one, of course, not several. Oh, so like here? There's no shortcut for that. So for example, if I'm here, I don't think there's a shortcut to go to the selected key. Let's see. There might be. Center current time. No. If I select that. No, that's not it. Frame. No, that's just going to... I don't think there are, but it could just be something I've never used. Auto frame? No, auto frame will just frame up the view, so it's kind of like hitting F, where it'll, if you have a selection, it'll just auto frame it. So if I select the whole curve like this, it'll just frame it like that. It won't set your timeline to the currently selected frame. Normally what I'll do is, if I need to go here, you have this slider on the top of the graph editor. You can just click right there. So tuk, tuk, tuk. You don't have to drag in your timeline to do it. So if I have a key over here, and it's like, okay, I've got this selected, I need to go to that key. Instead of trying to find a key on my keyboard, I can just go here, click, done. So that's what I do normally. So yeah, just this bar right up here. So let's actually take a look at how this feels. Yeah, definitely cleaner here. So we're not getting all of that like chaos that was happening before. Let's hit play. Yeah, it still feels a little wobbly. Like it just feels shaky more than anything. I think I could tone it down, remove some of the dirt that I had in there, simplify it, but at least the arcs are working better. Let's actually bring in the arms just to see how that feels. Okay. Yeah, that's definitely better. We're not getting that huge pop in the arms and the body. I feel like it's right in here. Like, this is okay. This is okay. Good. And then it's like right right in there somewhere. There's something going on. And it's in the chest, in the spine controls. I think it might be this like rotation back here. The rotate Y. It's like, yeah, it's rotating too soon and makes the other punch feel weak. I think it's the rotate Y right in here. We'll see if we can clean that up. Okay, so rotate Y. Whoop. So it comes through, punch, and it's just rotating too much here. Now we want it to lead the punch. So I think, let's just try this. I'm gonna have it go up and then hold here. So it punches, holds, and then we get that punch. So got to clean up our arcs all over again. Again, there's no like, oh, you're done this now, you're never going back. It's back and forth all the time. And we might change a pose. That's totally normal. The main thing with this, and this is kind of my thought process for all of the things I animate, is you want to think through what's happening. You're not just moving things randomly. At no point here have I just moved a key randomly and just went, let's hope for the best. It's all for a reason. I think, yeah, that definitely feels better already. I think my rotate Z is changing a little too fast right there. Oops. Rotate Z. This is one of the reasons why I like having all my keys kind of together, and I don't like these offsets here, is the moment you start getting offsets, you get these weird wiggles and it can be a pain to clean up. I can always offset my curves later. For now, I just want the ease of animating. Let's maybe favor up here a little longer and move it faster there. Okay. Now I'm just gonna, oops. I'm just going to zoom in here and double check my arcs. Because something feels a little off there. Did I tweak that by accident? Yeah, I did. Okay, that's why I was getting that big weird line. Okay, so right here, because of the tweaks we did, we're starting to lose a little bit of the arc. So that's going to be the rotate Y. Yeah, let's bring that back just a little. Okay. So we're taking some time here, but that's fine. I would much rather take my time, make sure this works, think my way through it. The more I can do that, the less I'm actually going to end up doing work later. So let's see how this feels. Yeah, better already. There's still a wiggle happening in there, but I think it's hard to say. I think it's in the arms and the shoulders now. Or maybe in the neck. Yeah, it's the neck. My rotate X. Right here. You can see how the neck goes forward, then back, then forward. So to kind of show this here, let's bring back the head. And we're going to track the neck control this time. So let's make sure that worked. There we go. See, I told you in a previous stream I got into my workshop. Hey, that's awesome. I got into full course starting in 2 weeks. Yay, that's so cool. I can't wait to see your work. You definitely have to drop by the dailies and show your work in there. Let's see, when you hold K, you can jump to a frame where you click. Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, K is the time slider keyboard shortcut. That's, man, why was that word so hard? So you can just click to jump around, or you can click and drag. So instead of having to change your timeline by dragging down here, hold down K, and you can do that in the viewports, scrub through from anywhere, which is really nice. You remember when I was talking about the weird graph editor? I got it fixed for other reasons. I had to get my Windows clean installed and fixed it. Okay, so it's probably a Windows thing then. Oh, so you were all... Oh, awesome. Oh yeah, so dailies yesterday. That was, I'm assuming, either Cameron's dailies or it was Friday. It was Madison, I believe. I'm terrible at keeping track of... Yeah, Madison. Yeah, she's awesome. Her acting skills are like just phenomenal. If anyone here in AM is interested in kind of improving their acting skills, just check out Madison's dailies and get some acting tips from her. She is so good. Her reference is some of the best I've ever seen. Okay. So yeah, here we can see the issues that are happening. So see the neck, how it goes back. This is fine. And then right here, this is where we're starting to get some weirdness. Right in there is that bounce that's happening right through there. So I think that's my rotate Y. Yeah. So let's clean that up here. How do you know who's hosting the dailies? Is it written on the calendar? No, there's no Q&A, like there's no daily schedule in terms of who's hosting. And that's mostly to avoid people kind of favoring one host over another, because we saw that in the past where everyone would just jump into one daily because there was this one specific host. So it's to try and avoid that, but also because hosts tends to change once in a while. So to avoid having to always update scheduling and try to keep track of everything and who's hosting when, and it's just easier not to put the actual person. The dailies are kind of there could be a different host at any point. Who was the reference person you said to watch? So if you're part of Animation Mentor, it's Madison Healy, I believe her last name is. Just look her up on the Animation Mentor site. If you're on the campus, if you're a student, she has amazing reference. Some of the best I've ever seen. Like hers is the type of reference where you can just take it and go one-to-one with it. You don't have to even worry about retiming much, and it just looks great. So cool. There you go. That's feeling better. Now we've got this duck in here. Quack quack. And that's feeling better. Now right here, this feels a little stiff. It's just kind of linear. Irwin, that's it. Madison Irwin. What am I thinking? Healy. Who's Healy? Just gonna move this back a little bit, round that out. I think actually it might be my rotate Z. Okay, yeah. So round that out. Just trying to get this nice and clean. Yeah, that Madison Irwin. Okay. So I think this is getting better. Yeah. So that was the main issue, is that neck was doing that weird tumble to it. It's still overly complicated. I feel like it could be simplified. Specifically right here. But I don't want to oversimplify it. That's the main thing. If you oversimplify it, what we're going to end up doing is just losing the texture that we've been building in. Yeah, so that's already way better. We're not getting that weird like wiggle. It's still got a wiggle in it, but now it's a very simple wiggle versus this kind of back and forth weirdness. And just to kind of compare, so again, this is where having buffer curves can be very nice. So this is the arc that we have in the spine right now. If we go through here and swap our buffer curves on the whole animation, I want to see what we used to have. Yeah, so you see how the rotations, especially in the neck, it's similar, but what we had before was it went back, forward, and then forward again, and then back, and it bounced. So we had all of this kind of mess in there. And this is after we cleaned up a bit. So after we did all our translations and everything. Actually, I don't think I grabbed all my curves either. So with our new curve, I think we can push the kind of figure 8 motion right here at the beginning just a little bit more. We're losing it a bit. So that's something I'm going to try to push. But then here, see how that makes so much more sense? We're not getting this weird back and forth, back and forth. If anything, I might just raise this up a bit. But I kind of like that he stays down. It makes him feel a little bit more tense. Yeah. There we go. So let's actually, I'm just going to tweak the beginning here, and then I'm going to have to call it pretty soon. Just because I've got a whole bunch of work that I need to get done. But already we've gotten a good chunk of this done. It seems like we haven't done much. We've done the hips, spine, and feet. But honestly, after this, there's not much else to do. A little bit of the head, which is going to be just like 3 curves, really. And then the arms, which the arms is mostly going to be a few extra breakdowns to tie things in and basically add overshoots. So we're actually in a really good spot right now. Let's see, I'm just going to try to exaggerate the figure 8 here. So as he comes down, yeah, that's already better. So I'm watching that arc. It's also good to watch your arcs from different views. So top view, I might have to clean the back here from the top view. I feel like I'm getting some weirdness. Yeah, right here. So always good to double check your arcs from multiple angles. Oh, wait, don't do that. So right here, we're getting this little pop right there. Where is that coming from? It's probably right here. Yeah, so there you go. Nice and round. Comes through. Then we get this big, like, just chunk there. Let's see if we can fix that. I'm assuming it's this one. Yeah. At least partially. Okay. No, wrong way. So just watching my arcs going through. So it comes down. Figure 8. Feel like I need to round it out a little bit more. But not gonna worry too much about it. That's better. Then it comes up, and I feel like I can exaggerate this a little bit more forward, so we feel that kind of break between the two curves. Not a huge change, but you see how you feel it go forward than back. It's just going to make it visually more dynamic. And then this frame right near needs to be tweaked. There we go. Now here we're definitely getting some weirdness in the curve. See how it's going out and then just straight back? That looks like it's probably the rotate Z. Okay. I think I'm just going to do one more tweak and then we'll compare what we had before and after. Okay. Okay. So we've got it pretty good. It could be better, but that's polish. At this point, we've got the main motion in there. It reads pretty well. Okay, so let's actually put our character back into non-proxy mode. There we go. And we'll get rid of our curve. And we're just going to do a play blast. And we're going to compare this to what we had before. So this is going to be comparing what we had when we just went into splines versus this first pass of splines. Now you'll notice that splines takes a while. Like we spent 3 hours just doing this. To be fair, it goes faster when you're not explaining it. Also, it goes faster when you don't start getting to the polish, which we're kind of doing, for example, with the feet in a few areas. But even then, in my polish passes, I tend to start going into this kind of like, okay, track the arcs, try to improve it, because if I can get it to work decent here, when I get into the polish phase, all I have to do is add the extra little bits instead of trying to fix all the arcs. So my typical workflow is that I will be fixing arcs and fixing all of these kind of little elements. I start that in my blocking. I'm watching my arcs. I'm trying to make sure that they work well. So this is what we had. And it's not bad. It's definitely kind of poppy, especially that punching there. It just feels like weird. Let's see what we've got. Have we made it better? Have we made it worse? We don't know yet. But let's see. Yeah, definitely better. The arms are still kind of weird, but let's actually throw this into viewer B and compare the two. So the new one is at the top, I believe. Yeah. So if you kind of just watch the overall head motion, see how like when he's punching, you get that flow as if he's kind of doing this motion. Whereas in the other one, especially when he does that final punch, it looks like someone punched him in the head and knocked his head back. It's little things like that. It's not huge. Honestly, if you were to just like take a quick glance at both of these, would you tell much of a difference? Not really. But it's the little things. So for example, as we go through here, and oh, there we go, catch up. So as he goes to throw the punches, for example, like right here, see how his body reacts here. In the old one at the bottom, when he throws the punch, right away his chest starts to rotate back. It's very slight, but it's in there. On the new one, the chest stays in place. Actually, I think I could tone down the rotate Z right in there. But it stays in place for a little bit, so it lets the arm start to come back. It's very minor, but that's going to add weight to the punch. Same thing here. So in the old one, the chest is already starting to rotate back, whereas in the other one, his chest is still rotating forward after the punch. You can really feel it in there. See how in this one, the head has to be tweaked now because the head's kind of going way too far in. But how the chest kind of, he throws a punch and he's tensing up for the next punch. Whereas in the old one, he was just straight going into the rotation. So it makes the impact of the arm coming into his body less. And it also makes that punch less as well. Now the head is just totally weird now. His head, it is exaggerating it at least, so not a bad thing. But it's little details. When he punches here, see how in the old one his body just popped back? Now it's a little bit more stable. Now with that said, I do like what the body used to do. I like that as he punched, he straightened out a little bit there. So, oh, okay. Let's add that back in. Just because we tweaked it doesn't mean that we can't go back. And this is where it's always nice to have different Playblast versions, because you never know when you might accidentally lose something that you had before. So in this case, it's just adding a little bit of rotate X. So as he punches, I want punch, and let's just push that back. So now we get that. There you go. And then maybe let's ease that. Oops, wrong control. Ease that back there. There we go. So I've built back into what I had before. There, like I was saying before, there's no like right way, wrong way to do this. There's no like, once you go into splines, that's it. That's all you're ever doing. You're just tweaking curves. I see too many students do that, where there's this kind of mentality that, well, once I'm in splines, that's it. I'm in splines. I'm just working in splines and doing nothing else. No, you can go back to refining a pose. You can change a pose completely. Splining is just... The concept of splining is not just cleaning curves. It is looking at your curves and making sure that every element, all your in-betweens, are working the way you want them to. It's tracking arcs to make sure that things read correctly. All these little things. But in the end, it makes it much stronger. Yeah, that's better. So I'm getting that punch back in there. Yeah, that's way better. So yeah, it's that whole process. One of the, like I was saying earlier, one of the biggest things that I tend to see students fall into is when they go into splines, it's cleaning your curves, which that's just going to ruin your animation. I've done that before many times when I was a student. It is not cleaning your curves. That's not the point. If you're cleaning your curves, it's going to ruin your animation. You're just trying to smooth them all out. But it's also not just going in and tracking arcs. Yeah, we're tracking arcs, but we're thinking through why we want those arcs to be there. Why is the character going to move the way that they're going to? Why are their hips shifting first or before? And you can see here how, like, when I was doing that and really thinking through all of this stuff, my animation starts to feel like connected. The legs and the hips feel like they're moving together versus just moving. Are you one of those people who find the graph editor relaxing or easier than the rest? I like the graph editor. I really enjoy working in it. Okay, I'm just looking. The top one is the newer one. So now, as we do the punch, we're getting that movement back, but you can see how it actually feels like it's not popping anymore, whereas the old one just kind of snapped. Now, there's definitely some other areas that I feel like it could be exaggerated and pushed, but for very first pass splining, we're pretty much, like, at this point, I would say we're close to the polish phase on the hips and the spine. It's just kind of a small exaggeration. At this point, I don't want to keep working on those, though, because if we do, and we change something in the arm, we might have to go back to the body. So it's good to not get too far on any one bit. The next part, which is probably going to be on Monday's stream, is going to be the head, the arms, probably the legs, especially the leg that kind of comes up. And then from there, we should pretty much be ready for polish. Refining and polish. So let's see. For animation, Maya is the best in industry standard, but like $220 a year for the indie version. Yeah, so Blender is good if you want just a free version, especially if you're just wanting to learn on your own. I asked a question about turns yesterday. You recommended to watch one of your previous VODs about gimbal lock, and dude, that blew my mind. Oh, I'm glad that it helped. Yay. I remember when I first learned that, because I still remember the assignment that I was working on. It was in Animation Mentor. It was my class 5 assignment. No, class 4. It was my first dialogue shot. And there was a moment where the character is doing an arm motion. And it wasn't a big arm motion. But the gimbal lock I got in there was awful. I couldn't clean it up. I was struggling. And when I found out how to properly fix the gimbal lock, something that took me I think it was 3 or 4 days of fighting and fighting and not getting it right and then trying again later, I fixed in 15 minutes. The whole area that I was having gimbal lock fixed completely in 15 minutes and done, like polished. And it's like, wow, it's not that bad. Once you know the solution. If you don't know the solution, it's a nightmare. So I'm glad it helped. I decided to use the body controller to manipulate just T, X, Y, Z, and the gimbal controller to manipulate the rotations. So to avoid gimbal lock only happens in the rotations. Translations will never get gimbal lock. So instead, what you want to do is translations, use those on the main cog, main control. And then what you want to do is split your rotations onto 2 controls. So it'll be, for example, rotate X on one, rotate Y and rotate Z on another. Or rotate Y on one controller, rotate X and rotate Z on another. So you're splitting your rotations between 2 manipulators. If you split the translations, it's not going to make a difference. Translation never gets gimbal lock. So, yeah, it's just split one of the rotations off. And usually I try to split like the major rotation. So I have one major rotation going and then the other 2 are just finesse there. And will I do the fingers? We'll see. Originally, I was thinking of doing the whole thing, like a facial pass, all of that stuff. But this is kind of just more of a test anyway. And I've done a few examples and shots where I've done hand stuff. So I don't know if I'm going to do it for this shot. I might, once I have a little bit more time in the next few weeks, I want to actually do a proper, like full shot, like start to finish, animate something that might go on a demo reel, something like that. And in that case, then I'll be doing everything and doing the full blocking process or the full animation process.